Clark from way outside, drops a three! Pick her up here. He's not been afraid to let it fly from out there. Clark just spins off of Broshan.
Indiana was down double digits and the building had gone completely quiet. The Phoenix Mercury had taken control of this game. DeWanna Bonner was imposing her will on both ends of the floor, and every analyst watching live was already mentally writing the recap about Indiana's latest collapse. And then Caitlyn Clark decided she had seen enough. Today I am breaking down the most dramatic comeback the Indiana Fever have pulled off this season, why DeWanna Bonner's decision to start a physical confrontation in the middle of that comeback was one of the worst competitive decisions made by any player in this league this year, and what the final result tells us about where this Indiana team actually is right now. And stay with me because at the 10-minute mark I am going to show you the specific sequence that every other breakdown of this game is skipping over entirely, and it changes the entire story of what happened out there. The Indiana Fever came into this game against the Phoenix Mercury carrying momentum from their recent winning streak but also carrying the weight of a season that has been defined by drama as much as basketball. The Mercury came in with DeWanna Bonner as their primary physical presence, a player who has been in this league since 2008 and who understands better than almost anyone how to use size, experience, and positional awareness to disrupt an opposing team's offensive rhythm over the course of a full game. Clark and Bonner have history that predates this specific matchup, a pattern of physical encounters across multiple seasons that has never fully resolved into anything resembling mutual comfort on the floor. Indiana fell behind early, the Mercury executed their defensive game plan effectively in the first half, and by the time the third quarter arrived Phoenix had built a lead that looked genuinely significant given what Indiana's offense had been producing. The first major turn came when Clark stopped playing within the flow of the game and started taking over it, shifting from facilitator to primary scorer in a way that changed the entire competitive equation. The second major turn came when Bonner, apparently unwilling to accept that the game was slipping away, made a physical decision that went beyond competitive basketball and directly into the territory that was always going to produce an immediate and significant response from Indiana. And the third turn was the final result itself, which delivered a statement about this Fever team that the scoreboard alone cannot fully capture. Let us start with the comeback itself because the specific mechanics of how Clark dismantled this lead deserve more analytical attention than the dramatic framing typically allows. When Clark shifts into primary scoring mode after operating primarily as a facilitator, the adjustment she makes is not simply taking more shots. The adjustment is a fundamental change in how she reads defensive positioning on every possession, moving from identifying the open teammate as the primary read to identifying the defensive weakness that allows her to create for herself while simultaneously keeping the defense honest enough that the open teammate remains available as the secondary read. Against Phoenix in this game, that adjustment manifested in a specific way. Clark began attacking the pick and roll at a different angle than she had been using in the first half, targeting the specific defensive gap that Phoenix's coverage scheme created when the screener's defender committed to protecting the paint. The first two possessions she ran this action in the third quarter produced clean mid-range looks that she converted. The third possession produced a drive all the way to the rim that drew a foul. The fourth produced a kick out to Aaliyah Boston for an open post touch that became 2 points. Phoenix's defensive coordinator watched all four of those possessions happen in real time and had to make an adjustment, and the adjustment they made created the opening for the next phase of the comeback. But here is where it gets genuinely complicated because the adjustment Phoenix made also triggered Bonner's decision to respond physically. And that decision is the story within the story that nobody is telling correctly. Now let us talk about what DeWanna Bonner actually did and why the framing of it is simply starting a brawl misses the competitive logic behind what she was attempting to accomplish. Bonner is not a player who makes random or unconsidered physical decisions. She has been in this league for going on 2 decades. Every physical choice she makes on the floor is a calculated competitive action designed to produce a specific outcome. What she was attempting to do against Clark in this game, when she initiated the contact that ignited the confrontation, was interrupt Clark's rhythm at the specific moment when that rhythm was most dangerous to Phoenix's chances of holding the lead. The problem with the calculation was twofold. First, the specific manner of the contact she initiated was visible enough from multiple angles that the officials could not ignore it the way physical contact in off-ball situations typically gets absorbed without a whistle. And second, she apparently did not adequately account for the specific makeup of the Indiana Fever bench and the speed with which Sophie Cunningham in particular would respond to any physical targeting of Clark. Both of those miscalculations cost Phoenix immediately and significantly, and the sequence of events that followed the initial contact represents one of the clearest examples this season of a veteran player's physical gambit backfiring in real time. Ask yourself this honestly. If you are a coach whose team is protecting a lead against the hottest defensive player in the league and you watch your veteran forward initiate physical contact that draws an immediate flagrant foul review and energizes the entire opposing team at the exact moment the game is on the line, is that the competitive decision you drew up? Because that is exactly what happened and the Mercury paid for it directly in the final margin. Now let us zoom all the way out because this game is not just an Indiana versus Phoenix story. It is a story about where the competitive identity of this entire WNBA season is heading as the calendar moves toward the postseason. The league has a physical targeting problem with its most commercially significant player in this game brought that problem into its sharpest focus yet. The pattern across this entire season has been consistent and measurable. Teams with experienced physical defenders identify Clark as a target for contact that pushes against the boundaries of legal basketball. They deploy that contact strategically in moments designed to disrupt her rhythm and shift momentum. The officials, who are managing fast-paced professional games in real time without the benefit of replay review on most plays, miss a percentage of those contacts. And Clark, who has been absorbing this treatment for 2 full professional seasons, has developed an increasingly direct public voice about it while also developing an increasingly powerful support system in her teammates who are no longer content to let it go unanswered. Bonner's decision in this game represented the most visible and most consequential version of that pattern this season, and the immediate and forceful response from Indiana represents something the league needs to take seriously as it evaluates its officiating standards heading into the postseason. Remember that sequence I mentioned at the start? We are at it right now. The specific 30-second window between Bonner's initial contact and the official's eventual decision was the moment that defines this entire game and everything it means for the broader conversation about physical play targeting Clark this season. That window is where the story really lives. Here is what almost nobody covering this game is talking about, and it matters more than any individual play in the final 5 minutes. The comeback Clark engineered in the third quarter of this game represents the third time this season she has personally erased a double-digit deficit against a team with an established defensive identity and a specific game plan designed to prevent exactly that kind of individual takeover. 3 times. In the same season. Against 3 different teams with 3 different defensive schemes. The pattern of how she does it is almost identical each time, which tells you it is not improvisation but a specific and repeatable competitive skill that her opponents have not yet found a consistent answer for. When a team's defensive adjustment to Clark's primary creation method creates a secondary vulnerability, Clark identifies that vulnerability faster than the opposing coaching staff can communicate a counter-adjustment to their players. By the time the defense has processed what happened and communicated the fix, Clark has already run the same action 3 or 4 more times and the damage is done. That specific cognitive processing speed under pressure is what makes the comeback sequence so difficult to defend against even when you know it is coming, and it is the thing that the box score assists total gestures toward but cannot fully capture. The second hidden angle is the specific role that the physical confrontation played in Indiana's offensive execution after it occurred. When a team absorbs a flagrant foul against their star player and the star's primary enforcer responds immediately and visibly, the emotional energy that floods through the bench and the floor players in the following possessions is a genuine competitive variable. Indiana's offensive efficiency in the 4 possessions immediately following the confrontation was significantly higher than their season average, and a meaningful portion of that elevation is attributable to the emotional energy of a team that felt its collective response to the physical targeting had been validated and supported by the officials for once. My verdict on this entire game and everything surrounding it is this, stated without qualification. DeWanna Bonner made the single worst competitive decision of any player in the league this season, in the worst possible moment, against the one team that was guaranteed to respond in the way she apparently did not expect. The first reason her decision was wrong is the timing. You do not initiate a physical confrontation against a team that is executing a momentum-shifting comeback in the middle of that comeback. If the goal is to disrupt rhythm and shift energy, you have to do it before the momentum has already moved. Bonner did it after Clark had already changed the game, which meant the response from Indiana combined with the emotional energy of the officials actually making a call amplified the momentum rather than interrupting it. The second reason is the opponent. Sophie Cunningham on the Indiana bench is the most credible and most immediate physical response mechanism any team in this league currently has deployed alongside their franchise player. Bonner has played in this league long enough to know that. The decision to initiate physical contact against Clark in a game where Cunningham is active and engaged is a decision to accept the response that is guaranteed to follow, and that response in this specific game cost Phoenix the lead, the momentum, and ultimately the game. The third reason is the league context. Every physical targeting incident involving Clark this season is being filmed from multiple angles, analyzed in slow motion by hundreds of independent creators within hours, and generating conversations at the league office level about officiating consistency. Initiating a visible and flagrant foul-worthy contact in that environment is not a competitive gamble. It is a guaranteed cost with an uncertain benefit. The strongest counter-argument is that Bonner was simply playing physical basketball the way she has played it for her entire career and that the reaction around it reflects the outsized scrutiny Clark receives rather than any genuine departure from normal competitive play. That argument has some merit when applied to earlier possessions in this game. It does not survive contact with the specific play that drew the flagrant foul review. That play was not normal competitive physicality. That was a targeted decision with a specific intended outcome, and the outcome it produced was not the one intended. So tell me in the comments right now, do you think DeWanna Bonner should face a suspension for what happened in this game, or is this just physical basketball that Indiana and Clark need to be tougher about handling? I want every take because this question genuinely splits people and I read all of them. Here are my 3 specific predictions for where this story goes. First prediction, the WNBA issues a suspension of at least 1 game to DeWanna Bonner within 72 hours of this video going live, making it one of the more significant disciplinary actions the league has taken against a veteran player in a regular season context in recent memory. High confidence, because the combination of the flagrant foul review, the visibility of the contact on multiple broadcast angles, and the public conversation around physical targeting of Clark this season has created a situation where the league office cannot credibly do nothing without inviting a much larger and more damaging conversation about its commitment to protecting its most commercially significant player. Second prediction, Indiana wins their next 3 games, all 3 by double digits, fueled by the competitive energy generated by this comeback and the confrontation that followed it, and Clark's individual numbers in those 3 games are the best 3-game stretch of her season to this point. Medium confidence, because emotional momentum in professional sports is real and measurable but also fragile and dependent on the specific opponents and circumstances of the games that follow. Third prediction, and this is the bold one, this specific game and the Bonner confrontation in particular becomes the moment that WNBA historians look back on as the turning point where the league's approach to physical targeting of Clark shifted from reactive and inconsistent to proactive and standardized, with new officiating guidance issued before the end of the regular season specifically addressing off-ball physical contact against primary ball handlers. Low confidence on the specific timeline, but the underlying pressure that would produce that outcome has been building for 2 full seasons and this game may represent the moment it reached critical mass. Remember the sequence I mentioned? The 30-second window after the contact and before the official ruling? That window is going to be referenced in every future conversation about this topic because it was the first time this season the system actually responded in real time in a way that changed the competitive outcome of the game. Watch for 3 things in the games ahead. First, track how Phoenix deploys Bonner specifically in the next time these teams face each other. Whether she is on the floor in high-leverage Clark guarding situations or whether the coaching staff pulls her back from those assignments tells you exactly how seriously Phoenix has processed the cost of what happened in this game. Second, watch the league's official communication around the discipline decision because the specific language used, and particularly whether they acknowledge the pattern of targeting or frame it purely as an isolated flagrant foul, will tell you whether the institutional response matches the competitive reality of what Clark is navigating every game. Third, watch Clark's free throw attempt numbers in the next 5 games as the most direct indicator of whether the flagrant foul review and the attention around this specific game has produced any measurable change in how officials are calling contact against her in real time. If those numbers spike meaningfully, the game mattered beyond its final score. If they stay flat, the officiating pattern has not changed regardless of what the discipline announcement says. In my next video I am going deep on what a fully healthy and fully unleashed Indiana Fever looks like in a playoff series, and the specific matchup that I believe gives them the clearest path to a championship if they can get there with this roster intact. The single most important thing this game proved is that Caitlyn Clark is capable of erasing a double-digit deficit against a prepared defensive team through individual competitive brilliance, and that any opponent who responds to that brilliance by initiating targeted physical contact against her is going to pay for that decision immediately and completely as long as Sophie Cunningham is on that bench. Subscribe to Street Hoops if you want the breakdowns that go past the highlight and into the actual competitive mechanics of what you are watching. And tell me in the comments, was this the greatest individual comeback performance of Clark's professional career, or does she have something even more impressive earlier this season that you think tops it? Drop your